Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Crypto Hipster Podcast. This is your host, Jamil Hassan, the Crypto Hipster, where I interview founders, entrepreneurs, executives, thought leaders, you name it, all across the world of crypto and blockchain. And I have an amazing guest for you today. He is the founder and CEO of Portal. His name is Raj Parekh. Raj, welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me here.
Thank you very much for joining me. My first question to kick things off is what is your background, and is it a logical background for what you're doing now?
Yeah. I think as a starting point, started my career at Visa, worked for the largest payment network in the world. The early part of my career at Visa was focused on building out a security platform to help banks think about breaches, exploits, fraud. It was at the intersection of security and payments that I started to go down the crypto rabbit hole. Bought my first Bitcoin in 2015 and basically just asked myself, wait, there's this open source permissionless network that's moving a ton of value. On the other hand, I'm working at this company called Visa that's also moving just as much value as well. At some point, open source has to win. And so ever since that first, Bitcoin purchase and discovering blockchains, it almost felt like imperative for me to build a career in this direction. That led me to starting and being part of the early Visa crypto team, where the newly created team focused on how do we explore the frontier of crypto and blockchains and how that intersects with Visa's business today. And that led me to lead crypto products globally at Visa for about 3 years, where we launched products and did a bunch of fun things also. But when we launched products like USDC settlement, where we could settle transactions at Visa directly with stablecoins over multiple networks. And then also did fun things like be one of the first publicly traded companies to buy an NFT like a CryptoPunk, which was a really fun adventure too. But yeah, that's my career. It really started off security, nerding out in the intersection of payments and security, and then ultimately going down the crypto rabbit hole. And now, fast forward to 2024, still building in the crypto space too.
Awesome. So I want to find out what Portal is all about. And then you also had a successful capital raise, during a very challenging market environment. So I wanted to find out how that went too.
Yeah. So, first off at Portal, I think, tail end of my career at Visa, it was pretty evident that there was DeFi summer, there was, the NFT boom, there was stable coins. The number of use cases that were popping up in crypto was just exploding. But it felt like the infrastructure to date was always focused on trading. And so I ultimately left to build Portal, to build a modular developer platform where customers can ultimately pick and choose their own adventure. If they want to go build a stablecoin payments product, that they can do so fairly quickly with high security, high UX. But if they wanted to build a full-blown Web3 wallet, interacting with smart contracts and protocols, they should be able to do that as well. So that's what we ended up building at Portal. And I think partly, to answer your second question about raising capital successfully, I think it goes down to I think a couple key elements is one, there's obviously a very large exponential increase in what's happening in crypto. So from a market standpoint, it's growing. Second is carving out the right team that gives you a competitive advantage on when you're building in the ecosystem, because there you need touch points, network, expertise in the product side, understanding of the primitives when it comes to crypto itself. And I think the last thing is, having a really clear, articulated narrative and pitch about, what area that you're really focused on in your wedge. And so I think those are some of the key elements that at least I found. But obviously, the market's tricky for most folks as well. We've been obviously fortunate to have great investors that believe in us as well.
It is a little tricky. I want to get into that a little bit. Thanks for bringing it up. The first thing I want to do though is I want to ask you about, what is your pitch? Your pitch.
Yeah, it comes down to, even today, it comes down to, there was no set of building blocks that if you go to any company today and you're like, hey, I want to go build in crypto, it's where do you start? How do you even go about doing it? And so that was the starting point of, there isn't really much that anyone can really build when it comes to the space, unless you're like super deep in like the open source ecosystem and you're a crypto native. And so we wanted to make crypto really approachable. We wanted to say, hey, you're a developer at an enterprise or a fintech or a bank, anyone, you guys can go and get up and running with SDKs, APIs, with like simple to use, with great UX. We're building it for your grandma, not for the crypto native user also. And then from there, start to make crypto feel approachable. And I think I always joke that, today we spend a lot of time with the nuts and bolts of crypto, but when you look at companies like Visa, like you spend your Visa card every single day, but do you know how that works? And if you ask most people, like they actually don't know how Visa works today. All they know is that I was able to make that transaction, the merchant got their money, and that's basically it. And I think we haven't come to the aha moment with crypto quite yet, where it just works underneath the hood. If I want to send money to my friends and family overseas via stable coins, it should just work. If I want to make a trade or some type of transaction, it should just be working behind the scenes. And so that's like the level of abstraction that we're trying to get with Portal, and that's what we ultimately built.
It's interesting you bring that up about the devs. Over the course of the past 3.5 years, I've been doing podcasts, right? At different times, I've tried to get a job, right, in crypto, and then every time it comes back, you're not crypto native, and I'm like, I'm crypto friendly, So how do we break down that hostility, and be friendly for everybody?
I think it's happening already. And I think a lot of it is, you see really interesting projects that are actually doing this today. And like, you look at their website and there's no crypto mentions at all. It's just value proposition. It's just use case. It's like, here's what value means to the user. And I'll give you a couple examples. Like if you look at companies like Felix Pago, a stablecoin remittance app, everything's built through WhatsApp. And so I go to a WhatsApp bot, I say, I want to send X dollars to my friends and family over to Mexico. It's all happening underneath the hood with stable coins, but the user doesn't feel like they're touching crypto at all. And so I think that's the type of experiences that we're seeing over and over again. Or even, one of our Portal customers out in Brazil that's building Velo, it's the easiest way to access dollars in emerging markets like Brazil. There it goes from Brazilian reais to dollars super fast. And then from there, the user is just feels like they're holding like a USD bank account in a different market. And so I think that's the type of stuff that we're seeing where there's no mentions of crypto. It's just using the powers of the technology. And then from there, making it really approachable. And another example is the company Takanos out of Argentina. They're building a freelancer platform. If you're a freelancer that's working for a US-based company and you want to receive payments quickly, use Takanos. And underneath the hood, by the way, everything's all derived with stable coins and blockchains and crypto. And so I think we're getting to a point now where there's a lot of really impressive teams that are starting to move away from, the crypto native world and starting to build use cases that derive real value from users. And it's exciting to see them like continue to grow as well. And like, those are the types of projects that we're excited to support too.
Awesome. So you mentioned Brazil, you mentioned Argentina, you mentioned different places around the world. I want to find out what your definition is of a borderless economy, a borderless global society, and what challenges we must still face to get there, and how you help.
Yeah, I think one of the things that just having a front row seat at Visa, like Visa, you can argue is a global payment network. And so like I was fortunate to be able to work with companies and teams across many different jurisdictions and markets. But building a company with traditional fintech in the existing financial infrastructure is really hard. It's hyper regional. Usually you only build a US-based fintech or a Mexico-based fintech or a European-based fintech. You can never build like a multinational company with the traditional financial infrastructure unless you raise lots of money and you got licenses across all these different markets. With crypto, the beauty of it is you could have a self-custody wallet, and now you're on day one, you're global. You can be in the most remote part of the world, but as long as you have that self-custody wallet, you could actually still receive payments from anyone in the world at any time that you want. And that's what I think is the beauty of crypto, that it is borderless by definition. It is there's no boundaries in terms of countries or states. You can cascade around the entire world and still carry your wealth with you. And I think that's the next generation of what fintech looks like, is a true borderless economy where I can move money from, from India to Africa to the US with no restrictions, with high speeds, with high guarantees for security also. And that's kind of what we're getting into. And that's where people are starting to realize the real value of crypto and blockchains, is that we actually do have these capabilities now, and it transcends like payments and it transcends fintech, and it's becoming its own category of what borderless finance could actually look like too. There's still obviously a lot of things that we need to figure out. The developer infrastructure needs to get better. User experience needs to get better. We obviously need to get regulatory clarity from more markets also on what is crypto and what does blockchains actually mean, and get proper definitions around it, because we all know there's companies that are ready to engage with regulators, but we're also waiting for clarity in order to get that too. So there's still obviously a lot of paths for us to work through, but it's hard not to be optimistic about the journey we've had to date, and also just some of the progress that's being built with some of the teams that are out there as well.
I'm going to add on to what I want to talk about today with you as regulatory clarity. I'm going to do that a little bit later. I want to something that you talked about just a little bit earlier. You said you were at Visa during DeFi summer. I was on the beach during DeFi summer. I missed DeFi summer. That was all about price discovery. And so schools of argument will say that we have not yet had an institutional bull market. We've only had retail bull markets. But the institutional bull market is close. What do you think? What do you see? When we get in the institutional summer?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's already happening, and I think institutions are a little different, where they're not gonna scream from the top of the mountain and say, hey, we're here, guys, we're gonna go invest in the space. But you talk to any major like institution like Goldman Sachs, Bernstein, they all have a digital asset department. They have teams that are actively working on it. They're doing real research behind the scenes on like the true value proposition and how it can actually like return returns for their investors and their LPs also. And so it's already happening. I think the ETF is really it was a major milestone, because a lot of these institutions are regulated. There's a lot of constraints that they have. They can't all get a MetaMask wallet and throw a bunch of Bitcoin or ETH on it, or specifically ETH for MetaMask. They can't do that today. They have to be they have to have proper controls and processes, and honestly, like, the market cap has to make sense for them. Usually some of these institutions are investing in multi-trillion-dollar asset classes. And in crypto, we're still over the $1 trillion mark, but that's just been a recent endeavor as well. And so there's a lot of things that had to go right, between market cap, having the right products now also, which we have with Bitcoin ETF, ETH ETF app, coming up fairly quickly here, and likely see some version of the Solana ETF also, where as an institution, I can now invest in Bitcoin. I don't have to change any of my infrastructure. I can say, cool, there's a new ticker now that I can invest in, and from there I'm ready to go. And so I think we're starting to see just like more and more like optimism from that perspective. And from there, I think the setup is better now than it was before, where we have the regulated products, and we also have some of the increased momentum from the space, generally speaking, also.
Now we'll talk about the regulatory. So institutions are beholden to regulations, whereas retail is not, right? So I think we have, people say, we have going on in this election that's coming up really soon, we have the first bipartisan issue where both sides don't want to be on the wrong side of innovation and technology, right? How do you think the upcoming election is going to play a role, with the institutional adoption?
I mean, I think it's going to be huge. I think, anytime you get, regulators, giving the thumbs up on, a certain type of innovation, whether it's crypto or, it could be AI, it could be anything. It obviously, it makes folks feel comfortable. If you're a large institution or a large enterprise, the last thing you want is have a large, legal team and legal bill having to go figure out, and get clarity. And there's a few companies that we've been fortunate to have in our ecosystem, like a Consensus or a Coinbase, that are going up to bat for us as a community already. But not everyone has the luxury to do that. And so I think anytime you're able to have an election where the output is hopefully some type of clarity, I'm a big believer in having regulation. I think it's fine. I think at the same time, like, we have to be able to meaningfully engage and have substantive discussions with our politicians and our policymakers. And so I think once we have that, it should hopefully start to breed more innovation and honestly unlock budgets across some of these major banks that when I was at Visa, when I used to talk to banks all the time, there was always a crypto team there, and people don't get a lot of attention because they're like considered like the dark horse sometimes. But as soon as the regulatory like clarity comes, like you can be assured that they'll have a budget and there'll be some interesting outputs that come from those teams as well.
Interesting thing, I think, was that when Jamie Dimon back in 2017 was calling Bitcoin a fraud, he had a crypto team in JP Morgan.
And it's often the case. I mean, it's yeah. I mean, from my time at Visa, I can tell you there's many crypto teams across. And I actually just talked to a bank yesterday. There's many crypto teams that still exist across many banks today too.
Yeah, I thought so. We're going to have to improve some things in order to get, adoption and payments and everything all around the world and create this borderless economy. One of those things is user experience, right? It's still not optimal, right? What's the future of crypto user experience? How do you improve it? How do you make it optimal?
Yeah, it starts with the basics, and we all know what the basics are. Is like we have to get rid of seed phrases. Like there's no way that we're gonna have my grandma or like even just like parents or anyone say, hey, go memorize the seed phrase, and from there we will if you forget it, by the way, all your money is gone. Like that's just not realistic. Everyone's used to having the forgot your password option for any account because we're human. We ultimately forget, and so having the forgot your password option in crypto, I think, is table stakes. And we've done some of that we've built some of that infrastructure at Portal where you can use your Face ID, you could use G Drive, iCloud, you can even use WhatsApp OTP or Telegram OTP. You can use different methods to then recover your wallet, which is more familiar to an end user. And I think from there you ultimately need to think about what is the value proposition of the underlying technology for your user base. And you can argue right now, and LATAM is ground zero for stablecoin adoption right now. There's you see this over and over across other markets also, but when you see use cases like remittances or marketplace payouts for freelancers, those are some of the use cases that you're seeing. And having a freelancer receive a payment from like a marketplace and say, oh, by the way, you need a seed phrase, like that's just not going to work. And so I think that's table stakes, is getting the UX right, and that's something that we've been building and thinking deeply about at Portal, which we're really excited to showcase. I think the other thing is that we need to start thinking about mobile first infrastructure. I mean, mobile adoption is starting to hit about 90%, like smartphone adoption specifically, across the globe. And a lot of crypto is typically web first. We've have a website we go to, and from there we interact with some type of application with a Chrome extension. With the whole scheme of things, like we have to meet the users where they are today. And that comes to actually having a really simple mobile experience that the users can actually lean on. And we're excited to support companies like Floor that are building mobile like first Web3 experiences where you just use your iOS or your Android device, and from there you can interact with NFTs, with DeFi applications, with games, and from there have like a really fun experience around it. But I think that's the two things. It's thinking about mobile first, thinking about removing seed phrases as a table stake requirement. And then from there, continue to iterate on use cases that drive, adoption, because, for one user, it may be payments. For another user, it might be playing a game. And we need to get that right for, where the users are today as well.
I struggle with this. You mentioned eyeballs. I'm not in the camp where many governments are against, eyeballs as a biometric. But what I struggle with is a lot of people are terrified of eyeballs, but no one's terrified of using their finger, print. And I'm like, isn't it the same thing So how do you know what the user wants if the user doesn't know what the user wants?
No, and this is where you give them options. And I think this goes down to, providing like a set of different options for, for your user base and learning about your user base as well. If you are catering to a certain camp of users that are like, pretty, they feel pretty threatened and weird about, giving their biometric information away, then I think that's like a really helpful learning and insight where you start to then introduce, other methods, whether it's like, using cloud storage or, using like your login information, right? Something along those lines. Like I know, for example, like I'm not personally a Clear customer because I don't feel comfortable giving my biometric information away just to get, early access through TSA at the airport. Like that's not my MO. But maybe for another user, they don't feel like they don't feel as threatened by it. And so maybe it is okay principally for them to then opt in that way as well. So I think it really just comes down to like learning more about your user because our goals as builders is we're solving pain points, and a lot of it comes from like deep empathy and like what the users are looking for and really catering to that as well.
That makes sense to me. Um, so, I don't know if you had a chance to go to Consensus this past year.
I didn't go this year, but my team was though.
Okay, very cool. Couple narratives that came out of that besides the regulation, besides the SAB 121 stuff, and were the future of zero knowledge and account abstraction. People said that they both have huge potential to grow the industry. Yeah, right now the only thing I see on Twitter X that's hot are meme coins, dog with other stuff, right? How do you cut through fads, hype, and paranoia to bring, real technological change and adoption that can really move the industry and humanity forward?
Yeah, it's funny. Like I've probably iterated my thinking on, meme coins and and some of these fads, over the years. But I think now I take like a less serious view on them, and I think of it as more like fun and culture, like you would when you're like browsing TikTok or like Instagram. You see fads all the time across many platforms. It's not specific to crypto anymore as well. And I think the cool output that's come from meme coins and some of these other trends that we see in crypto that are just more fun is that it actually stress tests the infrastructure. Like right now, like there's thousands of tokens being created on Solana every single day, and it's stress testing the upper limits of like what throughput and performance could look like for them. And as you think about a world where everything's tokenized and like this whole narrative of like RWAs and real world assets and tokenization as well, if we have like every single asset being tokenized, there are going to be many tokens that are created every single day, and a blockchain is probably going to have to support that also. And so I think of a lot of the trends that we're seeing with like meme coins and some of the fun that we're generally having in the crypto space as ways so we can, stress test, is our user onboarding look good? Does our, can the performance of the actual underlying blockchains actually support the needs of, many of these users also? And so I've kind of started to see it in that light. And, it's generally fun to interact with. And, we all as humans like love playing games and love speculating also. And so it's something that's never going to change. And in fact, it's not specific to crypto also. Like we see it in every other vertical or industry as well.
Interesting. I just saw it as a bunch of junk being created on Solana. But you said stress testing. Do you think the meme coins are going to be the catalyst that drive the Solana ETF?
They may not be correlated because like still Solana is still like the underlying asset and for the native chain itself, but Solana is being used for many purposes. I mean, my old team at Visa, they actually believe that Solana is actually purpose built for payments. When it comes to payments, you can't wait for a bunch of confirmations to take place, or it can't be it's got to move really fast. It has to happen like sub seconds. So I think we're actually starting to see the utility with Solana transcend just meme coins. And right now meme coins obviously has a lot of attention, but if you look at the Visa report on Solana, they actually did a really thorough thesis and deep dive into why it's actually really strong for payment purposes. And you're starting to see like new projects pop up on Solana for tokenization, where our friends at the team at MetaWealth, they're building a real estate tokenization platform on Solana where you can now buy real estate assets directly on Solana. And it's all through like a really nice user experience. and they're out buying properties and then making that really, seamlessly available on Solana. And so you're starting to see more happen with Solana, and the meme coin and the ETF is just a cherry on top, where as like a commodity underneath the hood, it's starting to like showcase its value proposition across many different use cases also.
So let's look under the hood then. I don't mean to bash on Solana at all. I'm looking at the types of blockchains that are similar to. There's three elements of blockchains, right? One is security, one is speed and scale. Right, there's three: security, speed, and scale. Why is it crucial to be uncompromising on security as opposed to the other two?
Yeah, I mean, for us as a team, I come from a security background. Like our entire founding team come from a security background also. Like we believe that's our superpower. We don't take shortcuts when it comes to security, because I think, and we think about this, and I know like other major projects also think about this. It's a personal responsibility. You're seeing hacks happen every single day, for different projects, and whether it's like Experian or like whoever, whatever it is that's happening out there. Ultimately, it comes down to like someone missed the ball when it came to security, and that didn't just affect them; it affected all their users afterwards. And so I think security is paramount, and I don't think any real team can build real reputation and track record without actually hanging their hat on the security side. And I think it all takes is just one hack to really throw that away. And so we stay really hyper paranoid and vigilant at all times. And I think that's actually a personal responsibility of the crypto ecosystem, where if we can't showcase that at scale, it's going to be really hard for us to get users to really trust what we're building also.
I just got a paper in the mail. I didn't know that my mom had had a life insurance policy from it, but she does. She created that like 40 some years ago. And Prudential was the company, and they got hacked. I see more TradFi hacks now than I see crypto hacks. What can TradFi do that that they're not doing well, that crypto is doing well, to help move them into Web3?
It's one of those things where we can all learn from each other. There's a lot of things that TradFi has done really well, and like as as security, as teams in crypto, like maybe we shouldn't push code into production too fast. Maybe we should run our checks, our quality checks, and not just deploy a smart contract too quickly, right? And on the other side, maybe all the audits and all the level audits that we do on the crypto side, maybe the TradFi companies could do that as well. Security is one of those things where we can all like collectively learn from each other. And I think of it as like, police departments across different cities, like they're not competing against each other. They're actually friends with each other. And so I think of it that way, where, there's so much to learn from, the Web2 space. And there's obviously things that we're doing well on the crypto side, but there's obviously a number of things that we're not doing well also, where there's still like folks that are, getting their wallets hacked or drained or something along those lines too. So I think security is just like a collective effort, and it's important to stay really humble while thinking about security also.
And none of those hacks are the blockchain themselves; they're the on and off ramps,
right? Or the protocols itself, right? Or you see smart contracts and protocols that may have some type of weird multi-sig setup where it gets compromised by some type of group. And so you're seeing this over and over again, and where it comes down to really having a nice polished process around how you think about security. And us at Portal, we actually started the company being SOC 2 Type 2 compliant. We didn't think it was like a nice to have feature. We thought it was a must have, because we need to have the right certification and processes internally, where we're thinking about security every single day. And that's a standard that we've at least set for ourselves too.
I like that. That's a good idea. That's a good mentality to have. I like it. Thank you. So I want to thank you very much for your time today. I enjoyed speaking with you, and I have one last question. And this is easy. How can people find out more information about you, about Portal? How can they become clients? How can they start using you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think the simplest way is you can go on portalhq.io and learn more about Portal. You can find me on Twitter also, and I'll just have to look up what my Twitter handle is. It's Raj Parekh _ my first name, last name _ afterwards. So you can come find me. You can send me a DM as well, and like I'm happy to chat with anyone as well. And also, thank you again for having me. This was fun.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time today.
Of course. Have a good one.